Welcome to Fresh Catholic, a podcast for those who are converting, reverting, or simply want a fresh perspective of the Catholic faith to help them to open their hearts and minds to become closer to the love and goodness of Christ. My daily prayer is that I will be a bright light to others, to be filled with the love and light of Christ, so that when people look at me, they see Him radiating out from me for His glory. Hello and welcome. I'm Lori Balderas, and I'm so happy you're here. So before this episode begins, I would like to start by saying, first of all, thank you for being my listeners. I'm very excited that I'm doing very well. I'm worldwide now, number 12 out of 90 top Catholic podcasts, so that's all great and wonderful. But I'll tell you what, I am in need of your support. This podcast is turning into something big, and I am on a mission, and I know the Lord is with me, and I need support. I need people to help me financially. This podcast, my husband and I have used all of our resources to get this thing going and keep it going, and I just have such big plans for it, and I know that I have a lot of my listeners are on this mission with me. I'm just looking for support for my ministry. And this is not something that's easy for me to ask, but I am asking because I just know that people will step forward if they find it in their heart to do so. There's different ways you can support me. You could join my Patreon. That would be awesome. If you have a product or a business you would like me to advertise, because I am worldwide, boy, that's a big net to throw out there. So that's another way. I will take any help I can get. So please pray about it. Find it in your heart to help me. I would be so appreciative. And I just want to take Fresh Catholic to the next level. This isn't about me. This is about my ministry. I'm trying to draw more people to Christ. So come join me. Help me, won't you? Thank you. So I must admit, I was not the best teenager. I did all sorts of naughty, bad things that gave my parents stress. Some things they don't even know to this day, so please don't tell my mom if you see her. But to be honest, I was a handful. I think the term typical teenager, and I'm doing air quotes, reminds us about our teen years, or our children's teen years even, and that the ways teenagers act, or act out, as the case may be. I think this is very typical. It is a rough time for everyone involved, though. The teenager, the parents, the people they're interacting with. Not all teenagers have a rough patch as a teenager, but for the most part, they do. It's kind of like the term terrible twos. Not all 2-year-olds are terrible, but it's a trying time also. That being said, and I'm not making excuses, but when I was a teenager and when my children were teenagers, we were not religious people. I mean, I raised my children a tiny bit more religious than my parents raised me, but it still wasn't very religious. I feel like the way I was handled growing up was okay, but I wonder if I had God in my life, what would have happened if my choices and decisions would have been different. I wish I would have had some sort of feeling of accountability. I wish I had more structure and guidelines about what wasn't okay that I was doing. I had some structure and guidelines, just I don't think enough. I mean, some things are obviously implied, and I knew right from wrong, but I just feel like being Catholic and knowing what's okay and what's not okay, according to the Catechism, and like what's grave sin, or any sin actually, would make a teenager or anyone, maybe, hopefully, be more hesitant and cautious about what they're doing. I also wonder, since my children weren't really raised with a big God barometer in their life, I wonder if I would have raised them differently and if they would have handled things differently, if we would have had more Jesus in our daily life. We will never No. It does make me realize that the children being raised Catholic at some point or another seem to drift off for whatever reason, and I often wonder why. Maybe it's because they, like all teenagers, start questioning things, start wanting to spread their wings, want to start making their own choices and decisions, and so as they drift away from their parents and their family structure, maybe they decide to drift away from God and the church too. I'm just assuming that. But what about the people and the children and teenagers that don't do that stick with it, that stick with the Lord, that stick with the church, even in their teenage years, even in their tumultuous times? What causes them to not turn away? These are the questions I have. So I decided what would be better than to have a devout teenage guest come on. So I inquired at work at the church, and the former youth minister we had, Gabriel Rivera, recommended my guest for today, Henry Cooper. Henry attends Our Lady of the Assumption Church. He went to school at Assumption School, and he now attends St. Bonaventure High School. And I've kind of had my eye on him, not in a creepy way, but in a very interested and intrigued way for years. He also has a brother named Jack, who I didn't even realize was his brother. I just thought, wow, these two kids are so stellar, but it turns out they're brothers. But they both have done altar serving for me for weddings. And I just kind of really been intrigued by them because I feel like they are very devout teenagers and young men. And I'm just so impressed by that. I just think it's so rare. So I asked Henry if he would like to be a guest on my podcast. And I kind of hunted him down a bit and ultimately spoke with his mother, who agreed to have him on the podcast. So I'm just hoping that this will help teenagers, their parents, maybe even their grandparents, to have a look inside the mind and the heart of a devout teenager. So that being said, here's my interview with Henry Cooper. Well, hello, Henry. Welcome to Fresh Catholic. I really appreciate you being here today. I'm excited about this episode. So can you please tell my listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Henry Cooper. I'm a senior in high school. I'm 17 years old, and I go to St. Bonaventure High School. I play volleyball. That's about it.
Is that it? And you attend church regularly?
Yeah. So 2 days out of the week, I go to morning mass before school at 6:30. It's very early. Because then the other nights I have volleyball practice. So I get home really late. So I like my sleep. So I only go like 2 times out of the week. Last year I went every day, but that was a struggle. So
And then in your household, there's your parents and your brother, Jack.
Yes, yeah. So my mom and my dad isn't Catholic. My mom is. My brother is currently in the process of going to seminary to become a priest. So he's got another couple of years and then he'll go into the seminary. He's in LA right now. He'll go to the seminary in Camarillo at St. John's. We'll see where that takes him.
How old is he?
He is 21.
21.
He's 4 years older than me.
We'll be right back.
Rising anti-Semitism. New generations redefining how they connect with Jewish traditions. Changing dynamics among Jews around the globe. Take a deep dive into these topics and more on Mosaic, Exploring Jewish Issues, the podcast brought to you by the Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County. Hear from the thought leaders, politicians, scholars, and artists at the forefront of Jewish life today. Subscribe to Mosaic, Exploring Jewish Issues, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Right. Oh, okay. So that's amazing. That's a big deal.
Super cool.
Is that something you've ever considered as well, or you're kind of waiting to see what it entails with him?
Yeah, so, I mean, I've thought about it a little bit, prayed about it a little bit, and of course the decision's not completely made yet, but from all the discerning I've done and just from my experience with different things and people in my life, I feel like I'm being called to get married, start a family, but of course that's not a final decision yet. We'll see. I go to college next year at Franciscan University in Steubenville, Ohio. So
wow.
Some people may know about that. So I got in, 2 weeks ago or something. So
oh my gosh,
super
that's
happy
so
about
exciting.
That. Very cool. So I'll go there and see where that takes me, see what people I meet, see what happens.
I bet your parents are excited about that.
Yeah, it comes with like ups and downs. So like my mom, or both my parents, I guess, are happy that I found a place that I want to go, but that was the only school I applied to because that's the only one I wanted to go to. And so they both went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and that was originally my first choice until I did some research. First found out Cal Poly has changed a lot since my parents went there. They have an abortion center on their campus.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of changed my opinions about it. But my dad especially is still trying to just apply to other schools. They're both my mom and my dad. Just apply to something else, see if you get in. I'm like, why? I don't want to go to those schools, you know?
Yeah. No, I think that's a good choice. I think that's very suited to you, I would think.
Yeah.
Okay, so I hope this doesn't, when I say this to you, it doesn't come off as a bad thing, but I just find you, and there's a few teenagers that go to St. Bonaventure that I'm very fascinated by, just because I say earlier in this episode that I was not raised in a religion, and I wish that I would have had a better like God barometer or a better sense of, I knew right from wrong, but I just really didn't have that accountability.
Yeah.
And also where I felt it was a really good, solid foundation. I did not have that. And my children aren't Catholic, so I didn't raise them Catholic because I wasn't Catholic, obviously. And I did the best I could. And I think my children are wonderful, but I just always wonder what it would have been like had I been Catholic, or had I had God more in my life as a gauge, you know? So my questions for you are, I don't want you to feel like a science experiment with me, but, and just for my listeners, I have not talked to Henry about what his answers are going to be. So this is very spontaneous, which is not like me. Everybody knows that. So I'm going to be very fascinated by your answers. So these are the questions I have for you. So how are you able to navigate being a devout, which I believe you're devout, Catholic teenager in a very hostile environment, which is our world today?
So personally, I look towards the Beatitudes. There's the two different accounts in two different Gospels. They're slightly different from each other, but when I first read them, like I went to Catholic school my whole life, so I've heard about them for a while. You know, blessed are the meek, for they will, you know, blah blah blah. But like when I read those and hear them, it's like, wow, like blessed are those who are persecuted for my sake, for some good thing that happens. And it's like, wow, like just me living my faith, and let's say Joe Schmo at school sees me praying over my food before I eat lunch, and they're like, wow, what are you doing? You know, that's dumb. Just that, or like any other example of me being treated differently because I am super devout or because I am Catholic, it makes me think, okay, well, this sucks right now, but when I'm further down the road in my life, I've, you know, have a happy family. I'm happy. I have a great relationship with my wife, my kids, my parish, if that's my calling, with God. I look back and, you know, I see, okay, well, that high school classmate's doing drugs. He's homeless now. He's, you know, it gives me like hope, like just keep going. Like for some people it might suck in the time being, in the present, but it pays itself off over time.
Yeah, it's hard to be persecuted for your faith.
Especially in this time. Like you don't see a lot of it as you do in other spots. I mean, yes, it does exist, but it's not like I don't have a risk of being killed on my way to mass because I'm Catholic. Like that threat doesn't really exist in where we live and what time we live in. So it makes it a little bit easier.
I just feel like when you're persecuted for your faith, I have that in my life. And I agree with what you say, where it's like, right now it's hard when that happens, but down the road, it's that peace you have. There's success in life of having that peace in your heart, or knowing that you and your wife and your children are followers of Christ. The reward of that is great. But for you to know that at this age, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That shows that your parents instilled that in you, I believe. I would think it's hard for you at your school. I know obviously it's a Catholic high school, so there's Catholic teenagers, but they're not all Catholic.
Not all of them, no. Some of them are either their parents are Catholic, they want their kids to be Catholic, but most of those kids just either don't get it, don't want to get it, and don't want to like commit to it or invest in it, in their faith. And it makes me sad because, all these smart people and young people, they have so much potential, but then you see the two sides of them. Like on social media, they're posting going to parties, drinking, but then you also see people you see their good side where, you're talking to them and they have some like really good questions about why Catholics believe what they do and just why we do things. And they're genuinely curious about it. And so you see that side and you're like, wow, okay, there's hope for this person, right? And granted, there's hope for everybody, some more than others. Just having these conversations, you see both sides of these people, and it's kind of hard because you want them to do good, you want them to succeed, you want them to grow in their faith, but they have all the potential to do it, but they just don't do it. People post stuff on any social media. It's like they're posting Bible verses on their story, and it's like, wow, that's great. And then their next story is them at a party, or, going to parties isn't bad, but the things at parties most often happen to be bad from my experiences. And then going back, you've got more people who are genuinely trying to take their faith seriously. I'd like to think I'm one of them, but a couple of friends that I've found and hang out with at school, that's like probably 5%, maybe even less of our school population attendance, people who go here, which is sad, but those select few are super inspirational and lead by example. And you'll see them being involved in campus ministry, putting on masses for the school, leading prayer events, prayer clubs. There's a Bible study club now. Once a week, they have Bible study in a classroom. They have a weekly rosary, all which have been not started by students, but definitely shown their approval of by students, like these 5% of our students, where they go to these things and they show that, hey, this stuff is like, I'm happy about this. I want to do this. Like, this is something I'm interested in. And we need more of those examples, because maybe people think I'm not cool. Maybe they think I'm lame. Maybe they think I am cool. That really doesn't matter. As long as they see somebody who is taking their faith seriously and seeing somebody that their faith means a lot to them and that God has really changed their lives, it's really impactful to other people who maybe didn't have that example at home. Maybe their parents aren't the best Catholics. Maybe their parents aren't even Catholic. They just want their kid to have a good education. So having that example is, in my opinion, really, really good, and really a good opportunity for these people to learn and observe.
Right. And I feel like what you said before, just doing what you're doing and being that example,
mm-hmm.
instead of like forcing it down their throat,
mm-hmm.
you're just being you,
mm-hmm.
and you're showing them what it means to be a devout Catholic at your age.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a grown-up telling them, or, somebody forcing it on them,
mm-hmm.
but you and your small group. It's sad to think it's only 5% of your school.
It might be more, but that's just what I've observed.
Right.
And a lot of times, freshmen, sophomores, they kind of keep to themselves.
Right. But you never know who's watching you. My parents have always told me that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I wasn't raised in anything, but my parents would always tell me, you never know who's watching you. So if you're going to have virtues and you're going to have a really good moral compass, it doesn't hurt to be in that smaller group,
mm-hmm.
but to be consistent, because then you never know what freshman or sophomore or even senior
mm-hmm.
is watching you and admires you, and maybe doesn't have the guts to be as outwardly devout as you are. To me, it's very brave and courageous that you know what the truth is. You know that it's a really good thing to follow Christ. It's just the smart thing to do. But they, for whatever reason, aren't doing that at this time. But you being a good example that's what you should continue to do. I mean, I think hopefully it'll rub off on them.
Yeah, that's the plan,
That's great. And how do you stay focused on Christ in your life when there's so many distractions?
That's a good question. So a couple things. So a year and a half, 2 years ago, I started doing a holy hour every week in front of the Blessed Sacrament. So once a week on Saturdays, I will go to the church's little chapel next to our church, where they have adoration almost 24/7, but we don't have enough people for that yet. So at all hours of the night for, I don't know, like Thursday to Sunday or something like that, people are in front of the Blessed Sacrament praying. And so once a week I go for an hour, and that has helped my my prayer life and my personal faith. And so, yeah, having a strong prayer life which you can always turn to. Like if I'm feeling uncomfortable with some situation at school, I'd be like, hey, God, help me get through this. You know, this is nothing compared to what you went through on the cross. Like just something as small as that helps me acquire the strength and receive the strength from God to give this person what they need to hear, or like help them out in some way, or to encourage them to do better, to not make inappropriate jokes or to not be weird in the wrong time, you know. So that's one part of it. Another part is like the physical distractions, right? So on my phone, Instagram, Snapchat, games on my phone, video games that I play, all these that just take up time and take up attention. I could be looking outside and noticing the beauty of nature, all the pretty flowers, the clouds, even the rain and thunderstorms, which we don't really get here, but you know, but noticing the beauty of God's creation. So what I've done, I don't know, a couple months ago, I've just removed Snapchat and Instagram from my home screen. So if I want to go on them, I have to like go through my phone and like search for them. So I can't just, because what I would find myself doing is I would just open my phone and I'd be on Instagram. Like my thumb would just instantly go to the group, hit Instagram, and then I'd be scrolling through. It's like, wow, that is like really sad for me. So I took Snapchat and Instagram off my home screen and put the Bible app in that same place. So when I go to open, my muscle memory goes, oh, I got the Bible right in front of me. So then I'll start reading scripture, and then I noticed myself just stopping that muscle memory. So I would just stop doing that, which is great because then I wouldn't look at my phone as much and I wouldn't be distracted. So
that's amazing.
I know. No, it took me a while. I should have done it earlier, but I thought of it one time and I was like, oh, that's a really good idea. I'm going to do that.
Because you have to work harder for it.
Yeah, exactly. It makes me like, okay, do I really want to spend however long on just scrolling through Instagram looking at pointless stuff? Like, do I want to waste my time? Instead, I could be reading the scripture or reading the Bible, or I could be praying, or I could be watching some religious videos, listening to podcasts, reading spiritual books or spiritual reading books. There's so many other beneficial things that you can do than scroll through Instagram. And there is some good stuff on Instagram, but you know, you get a lot of, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? So for me, Instagram was just a bad example for me. I would always see things that I really didn't need to see, nor did I really want to see, but you can't really react that fast. Once you see it, it's like you see it. And
right.
It's like, if it's bad enough, it'll get burned in your brain.
Do you know the algorithms of things, where that's why, you know, like you say, things pop up in your, where did that come from? It's because you took too long and you hovered over something too long.
You didn't scroll fast enough.
Right. Well, I feel the same way about distractions, where I've said in past podcasts where I go on a walk. Well, I used to go every day. I don't have time for that anymore, sadly, but I do the same thing where, you know, if you don't put the phone away, if you don't stop that, you don't notice the beauty of nature or these things. So it's like you have to consciously not be distracted by social media or these outward things. And I'm happy to hear you say that you know, realize that there's the more important things. Also regarding the chapel, I agree with you. And I love the chapel. I love our chapel. And I say I have a Saturday morning date with Jesus, and I go in there right after Mass. It's so quiet. And I love to be so close to the Blessed Sacrament. And it has also changed a lot about me. I don't go in for a whole hour, but the moment I'm in there, I want to say it is life-changing. It's like, that's been something I've just started doing a few months ago. And what I do is I go in and I'm right up close. I talk to him, and instead of reaching out to a human with some of my issues, I'll go straight to him now. And it's just this quiet moment, and it has been life-changing. So I do encourage everybody to do that, because it is awesome. Okay, that's good. And how do you stay strong in your beliefs when the world is trying to get you to abandon them? Yeah,
so just, I don't know, an hour before I left to come here, I was watching proof that God doesn't exist debunked, you know, and there's this apologist explaining, or I guess debunking these theories that God can't exist because of this, this, and this. And I mean, that's just one example. Like, I try my best to be open to what other people have to say. One of my classmates, I guess, came out as atheist. As soon as he told me, I was like, oh, shucks, man, like that's that sucks. I didn't say that, but I'm like, oh, wow. So I don't know his parents. I don't know his whole life outside of school, but he's a great guy. He's super respectful, super nice, means well, and super smart, crazy smart. Oh my goodness. And he's just trying to find truth. So I started talking, I've talked to him ever since like freshman year, just because he's super smart. He's in all my classes and stuff. And so I started asking him like, hey man, I'm curious as to what you believe. I'm sure I've seen a lot of the same like arguments and stuff for various things that you have, and I've just come to different conclusions as you. Like I'm curious to what you think. And so he was kind enough to write this like 2-page front and back of his whole like personal philosophies and beliefs. And so I read it 2 or 3 times, took notes on it and stuff, and was just talking to him like, hey man, like I'm very inspired that you are sitting down and searching for truth and putting all this effort and research into searching for what you believe is true. And like, that is very inspiring. And then we talked about what he believes in. I wasn't at all trying to like convert him back, but in the moment, like that's not what he needs right there. That's not going to be received well. If I say, well, you're a sinner, you're going to go to hell, you're going to do all this, like that's just going to put his walls up, and now he's not going to listen to anything I have to say.
Right.
And all this, it's like he might take it as an insult to his own intelligence, because like all this time he's been searching for truth, and here somebody comes and says, well, you're wrong. So it's all about what they are ready for. Who am I? I'm just a mere human, right? I don't know what God knows. So just having a conversation, seeing what he believes in, letting him talk, giving him a voice. And in this passage, he'd said that like he's very thankful that somebody like is taking the time to listen to what he has to say. And so I was not expecting him to write that. When I read it, I was like, oh, wow, okay, awesome, that's cool. So yeah, I'm going to talk with him, be unwavering in my faith, let him talk through things, suggest things, start saying, hey man, like this stuff, what you believe in, it's meaning well. Like he knows that you're trying to help him seek truth, and this is just what you find to be true. And you're talking about it, and you're explaining where both people come from. And from there is where, from the connections that you make, from the relationship that you build, is where people will listen, and people will open up more, and not immediately put your walls up and say, I don't want to hear you. You're just trying to attack me and tear me down.
So was he raised Catholic?
Yes. So I don't know much about his parents, but from what he tells me, he was raised Catholic. Sometime in high school, he fell away. He was agnostic, and then a couple weeks ago, he said he was atheist. So pray for him every day. I do.
That's good.
So,
well, I feel like a lot of people who are raised Catholic, cradle Catholics, they don't know why they're doing what they're doing. They go to mass, they do what they've always done, but they don't really have a good idea of why. And I feel like when they start questioning or decide they're atheist or whatever,
a lot of their beliefs fall apart because they don't. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Well, like from what I can gather, a lot of people, they just kind of go through the motions. They don't know what they're doing. So then they're lost because they're like, well, I don't know why I do this, so it can't be that important. And I don't really believe in any of these things because they don't really have a background.
Of course.
That's just been my experience. So I feel like you listening to him and just being you and having your solid foundation, hopefully this is a temporary thing of his. I also feel like that's a thing where people turn away, but then they come back when they figure out, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. I mean, even my husband, Simon, that happened to him. He turned away for over 20 years and then he came back. And a lot of it had to do with hurts and wounds and things like that. But then it also had to do with, because he was my sponsor in RCIA, and he came with me and he was like, oh, I didn't know that's why we did that. Oh, I didn't know that's why we did that. And so I think when they get their questions answered, or when somebody has a more, solid foundation in the faith, I think that helps. So if it sounds like he would be willing to have an open dialogue with you, which is great. And I think because you didn't jump on him, I think that's great. And hopefully, like you say, you'll pray for him, because I can imagine that would, like a knife to your gut when you heard that, because you're thinking, oh no, don't do that.
Exactly. I know what's going to happen if he keeps it up, if he dies and he's separated from God. Like,
Right.
I mean, we do have a merciful God, but if you're blatantly rejecting him and his mercy, it's like, well, I mean, I'm not the judge, but I can, from what Jesus tells us, like, that's not a good end for you. Right?
Right. So it's interesting he's questioning that. And then has he asked, well, because he was raised Catholic, so he kind of knows about the faith, but it'll be interesting to see if he asks you questions to, like maybe he asks questions, but he doesn't want to ask his parents or whatever. So that'll be interesting since you open that door of, I think he trusts you. You should be trusted because you're handling it very well, actually.
Thank you.
What have your parents done or not done in raising you that causes you to have this attitude of devotion to the Lord?
Okay, long story short, I have no idea. Like, seriously, I saw this statistic one time where 17% of children whose mother is Catholic and their father isn't Catholic, so in my situation, 17% of those kids grow up and hold on to their faith. So the fact that my brother and I have both held on to our faith is like, it's a miracle, really. That low of a percentage is crazy, how my brother and I are still doing what we're doing. And I have no idea there's small things here and there that my mom, that she did when we were super young. And, but from those things, I look at other families and they did maybe not the same thing, but very similar things. They went to Mass every Sunday. They received the sacraments. They sent their kids to Catholic school. And I never lived with them. I don't know what conversations they had as a family. I don't know how their parents treated them or treated each other. I don't know how the husband and wife treat each other, because that's a huge aspect of how children observe. They observe their parents. So when, let's say, a husband is mistreating his wife and they're yelling at each other, there's a certain type of tone that you should have. Like, you're arguing with the person that you love, the person that you vowed to spend your whole life with to get them to heaven. It shouldn't be malicious. It should be trying to come to middle ground and try to understand where your spouse is coming from. And I'm not married. I don't have any experience with this, but just seeing how my parents treat each other, granted, my dad isn't Catholic again, but my parents support each other completely. They love each other. They listen to each other. They haven't been malicious towards each other. They've been upset with each other, of course. Like, we're all humans. Everyone's humans. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to let the other one down. They're going to not be able to help out in this situation, not be able to give the other what they need in that time. But it's a quick, hey, I didn't appreciate when you did that, or I would have preferred you have acted in this way. The other half is like, oh, I didn't know that hurt you. I'm sorry. Or yeah, I'm sorry about that. I shouldn't have done that. I wasn't thinking properly. I wasn't thinking clearly. And just seeing like those interactions, like, really forms the children. Like, when they're young, they soak up so much stuff. They soak up so much information from what they observe and what they hear. And maybe that's the difference with my family. Maybe it's not. I have no idea how other families interact with each other.
Well, I know I was surprised to hear your dad wasn't Catholic.
Yeah.
Because I thought, oh, these people must be very super Catholic and they have these children. And I'm sure your dad's, that's not putting your dad down in any way.
Of course.
Anyway, I was very surprised to hear your dad isn't Catholic. And I know when we had like a meeting, your mother and I and you, and I kind of asked her, and I think sometimes when people have something working in their life, they maybe think that everybody has a similar thing, and they don't. Mm-hmm. I think you guys are rare. I think it's a goal of a family to, like I say, where if you were my boys, I would be thrilled beyond words that you have this, devotion to Christ, because I think that's beautiful, amazing. I do think it's really rare, and I just think they're to be commended. And I also know, after talking to you and your mom, that your dad, the fact he's supportive, even though he's not Catholic, that is a big key. That is a huge thing, that he values that for you guys. I think that's awesome. But whatever it is, I think it's great.
I agree.
Yeah.
And eventually, I would love to find that out, because imagine how many people you can change. Maybe parents didn't realize what they were doing was being detrimental to their child's faith or to their future faith. And these people are very, at least the families that I'm thinking of, are very well-meaning. Like, they mean well. They're not trying to like tear down their kids, obviously. Who wants to tear down their kids? Maybe they just didn't realize that what they were doing was being harmful to their children's faith. And I mean, you can't really fault them. Being a parent's hard.
Yeah.
Like, from 2 or 3 different families, I've heard the same story where their firstborn, they come home from the hospital and they walk in the house and they're like, they just let me take this child home? Like, there's no instruction manual. There's no, like, you have to sign a waiver. There's none of that. You just got to figure it out. And from those 2 different families that I've heard from, my mom being one of them, and they have the same experience. They're like, there's no rule book. I don't have to report to anybody, okay, this is how this is going. He's eating well, he's doing this. No, that's, you're on your own. And so it can be hard to discern what is right and how to raise your kids and how to raise them well in the faith. It can be very difficult.
I would think a lot of it is consistency and just being strong as the parents, having their own strong faith. Mm-hmm. I do think it's important to know about the faith. Mm-hmm. I'm finding, because I converted when I was 49, I'm finding that a lot of people, like I say, where they were raised in the faith, they don't understand why they're doing what they're doing. Maybe they've drifted away because, for whatever reason, don't have that deep love. I'm so in love with this faith and this religion and with Christ that I want everybody to feel the way I do, because it's such a beautiful thing. And I know what it feels like to not have it in my life. And I can see the contrast. Mm-hmm. So I think it's sad to me when people don't have that love, and that they do let worldly things come into their life. They do get distracted. Mm-hmm. They do turn away. I think that's really sad, you know? And I do think it's your parents being a good example as just being good parents, and then your mom having the faith, and this is what she is used to. So she's done that with you. Yeah. Now you have this, and when you get married and have children, if that's what ends up happening, then you'll already have that foundation. And so the odds of that happening, you finding a nice Catholic girl, now make sure you do that.
That's the dream right there.
Right. She's out there. She's already there, and she's already born, and she's
looking for a nice Catholic guy.
And that's rare, and I think that's awesome. That's amazing. What is the hardest part about being different or a strong individual in your faith in contrast to your peers?
So I don't want to sound like too prideful or anything, but I don't find it that difficult to be the way I am, because maybe I've been at this for 17 years, maybe not consciously trying to grow in faith, but growing in faith nonetheless, that I've developed a confidence in what I believe in and I mean, not to toot my own horn, but I'm a smart guy. Like, I'm not, that sounded really prideful, but
that's okay.
Yeah. And from all the research I've done and people I've talked to, like, I've come to the conclusion that the Catholic Church is the one true church that Jesus himself founded, and nothing really can shake that. So I'm very confident in what I believe in, and luckily enough, God has given me the strength to stand firm and not give in to when people pick on you, and granted that doesn't really happen at St. Bonaventure, which is very nice and very good. But like, let's say I went to a public school and somebody sees me making the sign of the cross to pray before my food. Bullying like that does happen. I have friends who go to public school who that has happened to them. And I am very grateful that I don't have to deal with that. But that would also be like super cool to be persecuted for your faith. I mean, that obviously that doesn't sound good, but like knowing what we as Catholics know, that's amazing to like be able to relate to Christ in a different way. It is nowhere near the same excruciating level as Christ went through on the cross and what the early apostles and church fathers went through. But it's something like that sucked, but I needed that. Like, it's humbling. It's like, okay, you're not all that you think you are. You are just a mere human. You are vulnerable to hate and to bullying, and you need Christ. Like, you need God to get you through that. And you see that in so many people. They are mistreated or harmed in some way and try and solve their problems themselves. And to an extent, they can get to a certain extent of fixing their problems, but they still have that maybe emptiness inside their heart or fear of the unknown. Like, what happens after death? Miracles, how do we explain this? And there's just that void that is in people's hearts, in their souls, that they can't fill with anything else. It's like trying to put a triangle through a square hole. It's like, it doesn't fit. You can't do that. You're trying to fit all of life's pleasures, all of life's goods into a God-sized hole. And that just doesn't work.
Well, and actually, you're very wise beyond your years, because I think it takes a lot of people a lot of years to get where you're at right now. And I do feel like once you figure out this answer that is Jesus, I feel like that's why I'm perplexed by people that turn away from the church, because I'm with you where it's like, Christ started the church, this church. How much cooler can that be?
Yeah.
It's not just Fred's church. He's the one that started the church. Like I said, I wasn't raised in a religion. Once I found this religion, I'm like, this is the best thing ever. That's why I wish more people were into it and not leaving it, because there isn't, to me, everything else is watered down. Everything else is just, it's not the quality of what this church is. And so I feel like you're so ahead of the game.
Thank you.
I really do. I mean, it's like, I often think if I would have been raised in the faith, my dad was Catholic and none of us were raised Catholic. I'm the only Catholic in the whole entire family, and I converted.
That's impressive.
It's wild to me. But I often think, I wish I would have had what you have as a teenager. I wonder what I would have been like. You know, I wish I could have been Catholic sooner, but that wasn't God's plan for me. And maybe it's because he knew I wouldn't value it until now.
Yeah.
The fact you value it at this age, I feel like your life is going to be amazing.
I hope so.
No, I just think, I think that's exciting because it's not fun to be a teenager without Christ in your life. It seems fun, but it's not. I'm surprised I'm here. I think that people think it's great to not have religion in your life, but it's really not. To me, it's empty.
Yeah. And I don't blame all these people. It's hard to blame them for giving into these worldly desires. Like, these things look desirable. You smoke this blunt and all of a sudden you're in heaven, right? And like, maybe you do it once and you're like, whoa, this is great. And then you become a slave to it. You get addicted. You keep doing it. And then eventually it doesn't pay off. And you see this especially in the people struggling with sexual sin. It's very rare for young men to not have desires like that, to give in to their temptations
life,
and to,
forever.
in a sense,
Your
destroy
life
their
and other
lives. But that's
people's
not
lives.
what they're thinking of in the time. Like, yeah, that looks desirable. That thing looks great, but it's not great. And it's super hard to discern that and to come to a conclusion about that. And I'm very grateful that I have chose the right path. And from all the research I've done, that I've come to value that, hey, this is like really important that I don't do this, and that I'm not addicted to sex, pornography, all that stuff that will just bring me despair and emptiness and depression. I'm very glad that I don't have to deal with that stuff. It's been great being free from pornography that traps your brain in and addicts you, and it degrades your brain.
One false move and it changes your life, forever, your life and other people's lives. What advice do you have for people your age about being strong in faith?
I think having a strong prayer life is essential, because if you try and build a cathedral or any structure, and there's a parable about this in the gospel, if you try and build a structure on sand, when the rains come, this foundation is going to be swept away and your house is going to fall down. But if you build it on the rock or on firm ground, on a firm foundation, when the rains come, that rock isn't going anywhere. If it's big enough, it's not going anywhere. And your house will stand up still. If you try and live a faithful life without having a strong connection and strong relationship with God and a strong prayer life, when turmoil comes, it's all going to come tumbling down. You're going to turn on God. You're going to find your refuge in other worldly things that aren't good for you, or in many cases aren't good for you. So building a strong prayer life, relationship with God is essential, and that is hard. I'm still trying to establish a strong prayer life. I'm taking good steps in the right direction, but there's times where I'll wake up in the morning and then before I know it, it's bedtime and I've been playing video games, watching YouTube all day, and I was like, wow, that whole day just went by. I didn't once sit down to pray. I haven't prayed my rosary. I haven't read the daily readings. I haven't done any of the stuff that I could be doing. And just like that, the day goes by and wow, that was 18 hours of wasted time. It's like, that's pretty like depressing when I look at that. And so I make sure, okay, well, when I wake up, I'm going to do this. And there's no exceptions to it. When you wake up, you do this. There's no, I got to check my phone. Oh, I got a notification. The only reason I look at my phone is to turn my alarm off. And then you go right to your morning prayer. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, it sounds like you're real disciplined.
Yeah, that's what is important.
You've also noticed, you've been observant of what's going on in the world being your world around you, the close-in world, and then the world at large, where I feel like you're observing, well, that's not working for that person, so I'm not going to do that. Now, I think that's part of the problem is a lot of people blindly, especially your age, blindly walk down a path of destruction. And it's like it takes a long time normally to discern bad behavior is going to turn out bad. Seems to me the scales to me have been thrown off your eyes and you're observing what isn't working for other people.
Yeah.
And you're going, well, why would you do that? Why would you walk off a cliff when you know that's not what you should do? But see, a lot of people do that.
And they don't think in the future. They're just like, oh, that looks cool. I'm going to go do that. And then they get there and they're like, oh, crap.
Yeah.
What am I going to do now?
For the moment. They're living for the moment. And it seems to me, I don't know if it's that you've observed what your brother's doing and that he's, things are working out pretty well for him. And so you're following in his footsteps somewhat. But I feel like, again, you're very wise beyond your years. And I think you are a smart guy. And I don't think that was being prideful or lucky that you said that, because I think it's true. And I think that's okay for you to know that. It's okay that you are proud of yourself because you're working hard to have a virtuous life. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And so if people look down on you for it, okay.
Exactly.
Stay strong in it because it's like, okay, well, that's okay. Like I say in another episode, don't lower your bar to meet other people. Keep your bar up high. Let them come up to you.
Let them raise their expectations, their goals.
Yes. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
And I also do think you never do know who's watching you. And maybe because you're being strong in your faith, it's going to help somebody else to be strong. They might want a piece of your action, what you're doing, like be that person that people can look up to. Yeah, be the light. I say that. Be the light. Be a bright light. I always say that. What advice do you have for parents and grandparents and other adults for navigating with their teenagers? Like I know you said be a good example, but is there anything where I do think parents get distraught sometimes and it's like they don't want to give their teenagers rules because they don't want to be the bad guy, but I think it's important.
Jobs of the parents. So the way I look at it, the family is comprised of a mom, a father, and a mother, and then however many kids they have, right? So the mother is much more nurturing. They literally have the power to feed their child from their own body. That is awesome. Like the fact that two humans can come together to create a new human, right, with a soul, it's incredible, right? So for the parents to agree on what they're going to do to raise their children, it's not the best for children to parent shop, to go to, hey, mom, can I do this? No. Okay. Hey, dad, can I do this? You should have this. The parents should have the same exact answer. They should be consistent on what they believe in, and then the children will learn that okay, whatever my mom says, my dad's going to agree with. Whatever my dad says, my mom's going to agree with. So you learn that they are one unit. They are together, and that you can trust each of them, and that they each have their own strengths to communicate, to raise the children, right? Specifically, you mentioned discipline, how it can be hard to discipline your children. I wouldn't even say it's an evil, but it's a necessary evil, I think. And again, I think evil's way too strong of a word. Tough love, right? You got to get it through the kid's thick skull that what you're doing is stupid. Maybe you word it like that, but you're doing something that is not good. You don't be mean to people. You don't take little Jimmy's toys. You don't hit people across the head with your toy trucks. You got to get it through their head like, hey, what you're doing is wrong. And a kid, they're not, toddlers especially, they don't comprehend complex thought. They're just like living in the moment, right? So to help them understand that, okay, what I'm doing is wrong and I shouldn't do it anymore, you got to do something profound to make them understand. And it shouldn't be hitting your children. I mean, I don't agree with corporal punishment like that, but something like, okay, you are not acting as you should. Go sit down in the corner until you're ready to be a functioning human, or something like that.
Well, there needs to be consequences.
Exactly.
Rules and guidelines.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. I mean, I'd imagine your parents were very fair with you, but I'll bet you they were firm. I'll bet you guys had your rules and you knew what you should do and shouldn't do and what the consequence was going to be if you messed up. And also, being Catholic, you go to confession.
Yeah. So about that, one thing I wish that my school did was to go to confession more frequently. To be a Catholic, there's like 4 requirements. One of them is to go to confession once a year, at least once a year. That is like really easy. Maybe go to confession time and maybe the line's really long. Maybe it takes at most 2 hours. Like you wait a really long time. You're usually not that long.
That's during Lent.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, right before Christmas, right before Easter, right? But 2 hours out of a whole year, like that's really easy to do. From my experiences, receiving the graces that you get from confession, it's like it resets you. So that's one thing that I wish that I had done more often when I was like 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, elementary school, middle school. We didn't go to confession as a family, which isn't technically a bad thing. Obviously, looking in hindsight, you think, wow, this, and that could have been better. But, I mean, you can't change the past, obviously. So,
again, I think like having that accountability where just as anybody, whatever age, I often feel like, okay, well, now that I'm Catholic and I know if I sin, I need to go to confession, it really makes you stop before you do something. Yeah. You think, wow, do I really want to do this? Because then I'm going to have to go to confession. I mean, I think it's good. It's a good gauge. It's a good, that moral compass. Yeah. But I just think, I would say my overall thought after talking to you is it's kind of exactly what I thought about you. I think I really, again, I've been keeping my eye on you guys, but I just think you're an inspiration. Because I know Simon and I, we went to school at the same school growing up in Ojai, and we were both talking about this one girl in particular. Our overall view of her was she just had this way about her where I just really looked up to her because I thought, wow, she doesn't like go out and party. She was not a dork. We didn't look down on her and think she was weird or anything. Quite the contrary. I just remember thinking she was just, I wanted to strive to be like her, but I just didn't know what it was about her. But I never thought anything bad about her. She never kind of did anything wrong. She was human. I'm sure she did things wrong. But it was more that she stood out to me because she was so different in a good way. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like everybody else was doing the same thing. I would think that, you having this moral compass, you are different. You do stand out. But I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. I would think it's a good thing. Mm-hmm. So I just really encourage you to continue having this way about you. And it's okay to be different when you're different because you're doing something good and virtuous. Yeah. I think, you're gonna stand out in the long run, and that's what you should do. I can't wait to see what you turn into. Yeah. I think I'm really encouraged by you. And I think that I wish there was more kids like you. Like I say, I think teenagers where they're virtuous or they have a good moral compass get a bad rap. And I think that's so sad and silly and gross. Yeah. And I think it's okay to be different and to be virtuous. And if anybody's trying to talk you out of it, that's wrong. So stay strong.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be better off, like how we started this conversation. You're going to be better off. So I'm really proud of you, Henry.
Thank you.
And I really thank you for coming today, because
It's been great.
yeah. So, and encourage your friends to listen to Fresh Catholic.
Okay. I'll spread the word around.
Yeah, please do. I'm going to give you cards to hand out. So anyway, thank you. And are you on Instagram?
Yeah.
I mean, I know you're saying you don't want to be on it, but
I don't ever post anything on it.
that's probably good.
Yeah. I mean, occasionally I go on and look at stuff, but
Yeah.
I'm on it
good.
way less than I used to. So.
And I think it's good to keep really high quality things in your life, and don't fall for all this stuff, because it, like I say often on my podcast, it's not going to get you into heaven. So it's more important to focus on the really important things. So anyway, I really thank you for coming today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And I want to try to get your brother on here too.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll coerce him into coming on here.
All right. Well, thank you. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Henry Cooper. I really was so happy he came and talked today. It was exactly as I suspected. He really has his head on straight, and I can't wait to see what he's going to do in the world, he and his brother. I think his parents have done a fantastic job. I think they're both beacons of light to our Catholic faith. I wish more kids and teenagers would focus more on Christ and the church and less on worldly things and obsessions and distractions, because it's really not going to get them anywhere. And I'm very proud of the young men that these two are. So thanks again for coming. And once again, I just thank you in advance for any support you can give me. I have been praying about this, and I really want to see this podcast succeed. And it's not just about the podcast. There's so many things I want to do with this. And I keep saying I want to throw out a larger net, but in order to do that, I need your help. So I hope you find it in your heart to help me to succeed on this mission I'm on. So thanks for joining me today. Thank you. Love you. Bye. Thank you for joining me today. Now go out and be a bright light in someone's life. And remember, be focused, be faithful, and be fresh. Fresh Catholic is produced, edited, and recorded at Wonder Mouse Studios in Ventura, California.